Hello, my name is Catalina Sandoval. I'm Armadillo Labs ESP consultant. In this video, I will share tips for the TOEFL ITP reading section. Okay, so the reading section overview is the following. First, you'll see different short passages on academic subjects. It's 55 minutes long. It's got 50 questions, 6 question types, and there's no need to know about the topic to answer the questions. You need to refer to the passage only what you see in the text. Now let's look at the first strategy, to skim the passage. To skim means that you quickly determine what each paragraph is about. For example, in these 2 paragraphs, you can pause the video and see what is the content of each paragraph. You see that the first one is what is a ballpoint and how it works. And the second one is who invented the pen, when it was patented, and how it became popular. So the first question type is to identify the main idea. This example question says the passage focuses on the United States in the 1920s, primarily in terms of something. So the key word here is primarily, which means mainly. Then you need to skim the passage, which is what we saw before, which can help you to determine the main idea. Then you try reading the first and the last sentences of the paragraph. So now let's try this with our example question. Here is the full passage with 4 paragraphs. And so you can see that in the first paragraph, a key idea is great change had been made in daily life. In the second one, improvements in communications. You have examples, rapid printing presses, the telephone simplifying communication. So all different aspects of society and in a positive light. Yeah, positive improvements. In this case, auditory and visual impact, making possible communication in all the country, nationalization of thought and taste, etc., etc., in all the paragraphs. You see in the first line of this paragraph it says improvements in transportation, and then the last one says examples like the plane, and it was fairly common, etc. Then you have some other ideas in other paragraphs. But immediately you see a trend, a tendency for the main idea, which tells you that the correct answer is letter C, influence of technology on society. So now question type 2, identify details. Here's an example. Which of the following statements is true of the ball in a ballpoint pen? And so what is underlined indicates the detail, something very specific. You'll see that this question is stated directly in the text. You'll see it in the text. Then there's always a clue. If you don't see a clue or something that tells you about this in the text, it's not the right answer. So here's our example, the paragraph that contains this piece of information. That is why it's very important to skim the passage first, to read it quickly and see what each paragraph is about, so that later when you have to identify a detail, it is easier to find the paragraph that contains that information. So you can see that the part that is underlined contains the right answer, which is letter B. If you read it, it says when the ball is pressed, the capillary action draws the ink from the reservoir and the ball functions as a valve to prevent overflow. So that indicates that it's letter B, controlling the flow of ink. All right? Here's another possibility for identifying details, that it says according to the author. So it's indicating a detail. You look at the text, here it is. It says, had the inevitable and perhaps undesirable effect of establishing a trend to national conformity in thought and feeling. So if you read it in context, you'll see that there is something negative about the improvements in communication, that everyone thought or felt the same, which shows you that letter A is the correct answer. It's a decrease in individuality. But again, there is something in the text that can point you towards the correct answer. Then, question type 3, identifying the referent. The referent means to determine what a pronoun is replacing, a pronoun like it or they or them, etc., etc. An example question is this. The word it in line 2 refers to and the specific word that it replaces. So you need to go back in the text and as close to the pronoun as possible. And you need to check the number as well. You need to check that the reference, for example, like it, refers to a singular noun and them to a plural noun. And that's how you can make sure that the replacement is correct. So if we see an example, the same example says the word it in line 2 refers to. Here is the connection. If you read the sentence where it appears in the second line, it says it rotates. So you have to think, oh, what rotates? So the singular referent here is the tiny metal ball. If you replace it, it makes sense. The tiny metal ball rotates within some part. And so the right answer is letter D, which makes the perfect replacement, all right? It's always a very good idea to replace it and see if it fits. Question type 4 is to understand vocabulary in context, which is a very frequent question in this section. So an example question looks like this. The word accessible in line 7 is closest in meaning to and 4 different choices. Now in this question, the words that you are asked about can be very similar to Spanish, which can be an advantage, or they can be very different, which is a little harder to do. So we are going to work with example number 2. The word need in line 5 is closest in meaning to. So always look for the word in the passage. Even if you know the word or it's something very similar to Spanish, you need to check it in the passage as it appears. Then you need to replace it to see if the choice fits. If you're not sure at all, discard. Try to make your best guess. And finally, read the sentence where the word appears or the sentence before or after that word, and the content will give you clues as to what the meaning is. So here's an example. Once again, the word need and the meaning. We have unite, attract, inform, and study. So you go back to the text where the word appears, and you see that it says to knit more closely citizens. The words in red, more closely, are clues to tell you that the correct meaning is unite and not attract, for example. Question type 5 is to make inferences. It can be inferred, literally, that the ball paint first gained popularity among certain group. This question is implied, not stated like details. There's always a clue in the text. Even if it's implied, there's always a clue, otherwise it's not a reliable answer. And here's an example. You see there's a clue in the text. The United States Army requires a pen, so the right answer is letter A, military personnel. In this case, they're using sort of a synonym of this phrase because they usually do that. They give you synonyms. They are not going to use the exact word that appears in the text. Finally, question type 6, identify the purpose. Why does the author mention this word in line 5? What is the purpose of that? You look for the concept, X-ray emissions, you look it up in the paragraphs, and once you find it, you read it in context, you read the sentence where it appears. And because of the connector here, for instance, you know that this is an example of some kind, which is letter C, to provide an example of what false colors represent. It's a very specific question, this one, so go for the word in the text first. To finish, how to recognize a bad answer, because after all, this is a test and there are strategies that you need to follow. First, it repeats information too literally without answering the question, so don't be fooled or tricked by similar words. It's usually a distraction. Second, the information is incorrect or imprecise according to the passage. The information is irrelevant, has nothing to do with what the passage says, or it's not even mentioned in the passage. And your answer must be supported by some part of the passage. This is really important, and if it's not supported, it will be incorrect. So don't just guess, and that's it. I hope this video was useful to you and that you can practice these strategies at home. If you need help with reading and writing in English, here are the contact details.